Think to yourself of your favorite animated movie. More often than not, it was made by a team of animators who worked tirelessly for months on the film. Today, while I'm not going to show you how to make something like The Lion King, I am going to help show you how to make something much simpler and hopefully grow your appreciation for what animators go through to make the movies, shows, and games that you love. The first thing about animation is it's just a bunch of pictures. We call them frames. These frames are lined up one by one after the other to give the illusion of movement. This illusion is called the persistence of vision. It's why when we watch animation, it doesn't look like just a bunch of slideshows. The line, please.
That's because when the next frame comes onto the screen.
When the next frame comes onto the screen, our brain and eyes retain 1/5 of the previous image for 1/5 of a second of the previous image. This, combined with the subtle changes from picture to picture, is why we see movement in animation. Okay. In movies and shows, you would have storyboards. Storyboards are still pictures that draft out your animation, and after you finish them, you line them up with dialogue or music that are in the scene. After that, you'd go on. You can find a lot of examples of storyboards of your favorite movies or shows. After that, you'd have keyframes. Keyframes are the key or main pose in your scene. They're much like comic book panels.
Keyframes can be used to time the animation.
Yeah. Keyframes can be used to time the animation or segment it up into basic poses or scenes in your animation. For my next example, we have Jack. This is Jumping Jack, and you'll see why in a minute. He's made with sticks and lines. Hopefully things everyone in here can draw. First, he's standing, then he's squatting to prepare to jump into the air. He's in the air, and then he's landing back on the ground, and then he's back at where he started. It seems a little rigid, doesn't it? Well, to combat that stiffness, you can add in-betweens. In-betweens are frames that you put in between each keyframe. You can put more than one to make your animations go smoother. The way I see it, the best way to start in-betweens is to find the middlemost position between each thing and put it down between each keyframe. Here, I added more in-betweens and to make Jumping Jack's movements much more smoother.
Now, because Jumping Jack is already lines and circles.
Yep. For my next topic, I'll be talking about line art. Line art is the clearer lines that are placed over the sketch to make your drawing or animation look much clearer. Now, for my next example, because Jack is already lines and circles, not much to base off of, this is my friend's dog, Lucy. She's a really sweet girl, and because she's so expressive, we've basically made a meme of her. This is a rough animation I did of her just idling by. See how rough and sketchy it is? Well, for line art, you have to make sure you're being consistent. Otherwise, it'll look just as sketchy and rough as your previous version of it. Here's the cleaned up line art version of it. Now, once you've finished with your lines, you want to color it, don't you? Well, you have to make sure that you're being consistent with that too. Usually, you'd have a reference sheet, which is composed of the basic palette of the character and just shapes that break the character down to their most simplest forms. Well, I added color to Lucy, and she's more brought to life. Yeah. Okay. In animation, there's something called frames per second, or FPS. It's not the same as first-person shooter. I'll tell you that. Frames per second determines how fast or slow your animation goes. For me, since I'm starting out as an animator, most of my animations end up being 10 frames a second. But most shows and movies run on 24 frames per second, while some specific scenes and games mainly run on 60 frames per second. The program I use is FilePaca. It's a free program and it has a really simple interface. This is my setup right here. There are many other programs that are more for experienced animators, such as Krita and the program DaVinci Resolve, which support the timeline. Line, please.
There are many other programs you can use to animate.
Okay.
Some accommodate different animation styles.
Yep. There are a bunch of different animation styles, but what are there? Well, there's flipbook animation, which is the 2D traditional 2D animation. There's 3D animation, there's stop motion, and for the traditional animation, Disney and the old school Disney and the Warner Brothers were the pioneers of it. Now, do you ever wonder why we don't see 2D animation that much anymore? Well, in 1995, with the release of Toy Story, the first 3D digital animated film, it was the start of the decline of 2D animation. And after that, there's been a whole bunch more that consists of 3D animation. Okay. Now, there's so many more types of animation that I could go on and on, but animation isn't that hard. It's easy once you learn how it works and learn what you need to do for it. You can be an animator just like me. If you're creative and put time and effort, you can become an animator and one day find your name at the end credits of anything you love, such as a movie, game, or anything. Thank you.